Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
What do you do when, despite doctors and tests telling you that you are fine, you know something is not quite right? My name is Dr. Rowe, and this is LifeJacked, the Resilience Podcast. LifeJacked is when an unfortunate or unplanned event happens to jack with your life. My guest for this week, Risa August, an author, Ironman athlete, endurance cyclist, CrossFit enthusiast, and lover of anything active and outdoors, knew that something was not quite right with her body. In 2011, she started visiting doctors, but was dismissed time and time again. But one doctor decided to order a brain MRI, and it was discovered there was a large tumor at the base of her brain. After brain surgery and 6 weeks of radiation treatment, she began to realize that she may never be the same. She had to stop focusing on what she could no longer do, who she no longer was, and began focusing on what was possible. Developing an acronym for the word CAN, C-A-N, and a decision to ride her bike from Canada to Mexico ignited a spark to help her write her book, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor and a Bike. Hi, Risa. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So around 2011, you knew something strange was going on with your body. So what exactly were you feeling?
Yes, I was just coming off of an Ironman race and preparing for a 500-mile bike ride event. And I had about 9 to 10 months in between the two. And during that time, I noticed unusual weight gain, despite not changing my diet and still training as per my usual. And this wasn't just a few pounds, it was like a fair amount. And I also noticed that I was having like drastic blood sugar drops and struggling to recover efficiently following my workout. That's kind of where it started.
So did you think, oh, well, maybe I need more supplements, or maybe I need to, get some amino acids or do some IV? So none of that, did that cross your mind at all?
Oh, yes. I thought I had to change my diet. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't hydrating enough, or, eating enough for recovery, or eating the right foods for recovery, or maybe I was even overtraining. However, in my mind, that was actually not even an option. I wouldn't even allow that sway me away from it. But yes, all that crossed my mind. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Wow. And I mean, it's hard to think that you were thinking in yourself, what are you doing wrong? I mean, you are an endurance cyclist. I couldn't even imagine driving 500 miles, let alone biking 500 miles at all. I mean, that's truly remarkable. So you went to visit, of course, then it led to the decision for you to visit the doctor. And of course, doctors were dismissing you. And so from their responses, how did that make you feel?
Well, I remember feeling extremely frustrated, like almost like why won't anyone listen to me? If they only knew me, if they only knew that I'm not a hypochondriac, I'm actually a bit of a health fanatic, and like I won't even take ibuprofen for pain relief. I wouldn't call myself a purist by any means, but I definitely was pretty stringent on what I put into my body. At one time in my life, in my early 20s, I actually battled orthorexia because I became so stringent and rigid with what I was putting into my body. And so I remember I almost felt like the doctors were judging me, like I was just one of those people, something was always wrong. But in my mind, I was frustrated because I'm like, if they knew me, I wouldn't even be in here. I wouldn't even be seeing a doctor. And so I just kept being told, oh, by the doctor, I'm not worried. You're an athlete. Your blood work's fine. And so I went back to myself, like, oh, then I must be doing something wrong.
Wow. And so the one doctor who hit the nail on the head, was there something different about this particular doctor that you sensed in the beginning? Or like, was there anything different about this particular doctor than all the other doctors?
Well, it actually wasn't this doctor. This doctor actually, again, was meeting me with resistance. I'm the one that changed. I found my voice and said, I have such severe headaches. I want an MRI. And this doctor was actually extremely resistant to that. And it took 3 times, to the point where I was like, I'm no longer asking. I'm demanding an MRI. And then that's when they found it. And then I was referred to an endocrinologist, which I didn't even know at the time what an endocrinologist was. And it was the endocrinologist that finally was meeting me where I was at. And it became a partnership, like a team. Okay, how do we move forward together? And so she's been amazing.
It's always funny to me, when you have insurance, right? Because that's what insurance is for, is to help you in times of need health-wise. And we have insurance, and you go to the doctor and you say something's not right, and they're like, I'm running tests, you're fine. You're like, no, something's not right. I me's almost like, well, you're not paying for it. I'm paying for it. So it's almost like, why? It's like, why is the doctor being resistant? And then I hear of other people who are always going to the doctor and always finding weird things wrong with them when there's nothing wrong with them, or the people who get prescribed opioids and they don't really need them, but the doctor is just, giving them to them like Skittles. It's so weird. That's such a strange thing that doctors do that.
But yeah, I remember thinking, let's just rule this out. Like stay out of my pocketbook. None of your business. For me, let's just, like, peace of mind for me. I hope to God there's nothing in there, and I just want to rule it out.
No, definitely. So after learning, so you're the endocrinologist, and for those that don't know, that has to do with your kidney system, right? And what else does it have to do?
It's all the glands in your body. It's the endocrine system. So it's all the glands in your body, and which impact your hormones, and your hormones control absolutely everything that goes on inside of you.
You learned that you had a tumor from the brain MRI. So after learning that, what feeling or emotion did you have?
Yeah, so I learned that I had a tumor on my pituitary gland, which is about the size of a pea, and the tumor was a little larger than a golf ball, and it was crammed into this very small space between my eyeballs and at the base of the brain. And I remember feeling it felt very surreal. And I also didn't take it that seriously because I always just bounced back. I was an athlete. I was strong. I was healthy. Like, okay, well, what do we need to do to kind of move on? Like, I have life. I need to move on. And I have things going on in my life. And so can we just get this done, whatever needs to happen? And so it kind of didn't really hit me at that moment in the endocrinologist's office that day. It took a little while. And I think sometimes I still don't fully believe the gravity of it.
Wow. So the pituitary gland, which you said is a pea size, but you said golf ball size tumor?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so for those of us who don't carry around an anatomy and physiology book, What exactly is the pituitary gland and why is it important?
Yes. Okay. So this is going to be very scientific description of it, but it's about the size of a pea, and it's found at the base of your brain, kind of in line with the top of your nose, and it acts as like the master gland, and it tells all the other glands in your body what to do. And I mean, it controls everything from your metabolism, growth. So like it can cause everything to grow, bones, tissue, organs, everything. How your body transforms and manages energy from the food you eat. It controls, reproduction, blood pressure, every vital physical function and process in your body. And it's also believed to control your mental and emotional state and how we make decisions based on how we're feeling in the moment, which is pretty incredible.
Wow. And so you mentioned that it controls metabolism, which that would make sense why you would have this weight gain all of a sudden, or feeling tired, or not having the recovery after doing a workout. Wow. That's just, I couldn't even imagine.
Yes. And also like tissue growth. So it grows all your tissues as well. So metabolism, yes. Like I was hungry constantly, but I was training, 2 a days. So I'd get up and swim for an hour and a half. And then after work, I'd maybe bike for 3 to 5 hours, or, so the constant eating didn't faze me as much as the expansion of, all I can describe it as, it's almost like overdosing on gluten and just feeling swollen and puffy all the time, and your feet not fitting in your shoes, and that's kind of what it felt. So I felt like extremely puffy, and that's due to the tissue growth from the overproduction of the growth hormone.
What adjustments have you had to make since learning of your diagnosis?
Oh my gosh, how I operate entirely. I mean, from physical to mental to emotional. I'll start with the physical. I can no longer walk long distances without severe pain. So going from racing and Ironman races, I can, barely get around Costco without throbbing pain by the end of it. And, I have a lot of muscle weakness. The fatigue is severe. And so I'm no longer waking up at 5:30 in the morning to go for swims. I'm lucky to get out of bed by 8 a.m. And then I used to be extremely sharp and detailed person. I was hired in my job for this, and I also ran my own wedding and event planning company. But all of a sudden, my memory shifted, some of my cognitive stuff shifted. I make way more mistakes than I ever made in my life, and which used to drive me nuts, and now I just come to accept it. And then also just learning, like I saw this as a gift of, I went from being this rigid, very particular person that could only see things in my way, and now like it's just opened me up, and I've done so much healing emotionally, and I'm such a better human for it. I'm living as a better human because of it.
Well, I commend you on making the adjustments, because I know that at times in our lives it's hard. We like to think we are who we are, right? So I don't want to change. I don't want to have to make adjustments to who I am. I like who I am. So here's this thing that has life jacked me, right? And now I got to do something else and be different and make adjustments. So I commend you for that.
Yes, and it didn't come without its grief or tantrums or moments. It definitely took a lot of work, but again, the payoff is beautiful.
So did you have a support system or a particular person who supported you through this traumatic time in your life? And I guess really you still deal with it, but after the initial knowledge, knowing finally, what your diagnosis was, like, did you have someone who was in your corner?
I didn't or don't feel I ever did. It's an interesting place to be with diagnosis. Is it can feel very lonely because the people around you don't quite understand it. And in my situation, I present the same way. I don't look like I've changed much at all, but oh my gosh, I have. I'm not the same person at all, and I can see all of my changes. And so when, people are expecting me to not make mistakes because that's what I was hired to not, to do, to be the detailed person, or when, my energy levels are not what they used to be and I can't show up in the manner I used to be. Like, people don't understand that because I look the same. It's not like my head was cut off and now all of a sudden I don't have a head. Like, everything looks the same on the outside. And so it's hard for, I think, people to understand and relate to that. And it's also a complex situation because my tumor causes this rare disease that causes all these issues in my body. And I think people don't quite understand the complexities of it. And so it has felt like a lonely road. I do have people around me that are very caring and loving, and if I need them, I can call them and stuff. But I don't feel I had that kind of one person that could catch me when I fall, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I've heard people say that sometimes, who have varying disabilities, whether it's, high functioning autism or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, or sometimes even cancer, if it's in remission, but still they battle with a couple of, different health concerns and issues. But sometimes, yes, life is hard for people, and sometimes people don't understand. Well, they say, well, you look fine on the outside. You don't realize if you knew what I was dealing with on the inside. My life is crazy at times. So what do you do to help you with that? And, do you have a particular strategy or, something that you do that helps you cope and, kind of push away the guilt and not take on people are trying to push off onto you?
Oh, that's been a journey. Oh my goodness. I think I wanted to present as normal. I can feel myself getting emotional around this. I wanted to present the same way of in the beginning because I didn't want people to see me any differently, and I didn't want to be treated differently, and I wanted to convince myself and the world that, oh no, this ain't taking me down. I got this. I'll show you. I'm gonna be every bit of what I was and better. Like this don't got me. Or this doesn't have me. and and so I was very resistant in the beginning, and I think I got to a point where I can no longer hide it. My battle continues and it's progressing, and I could either embrace it, which is way easier than resisting it, or I can resist it and, and then what, make excuses, that just doesn't serve me.
Now, you developed an acronym for the word CAN, CAN. So could you share that with us?
Sure. Yeah. It got to a point where I think I soon realized, okay, life isn't going to really be the same for me. I'm not going to bounce back like I thought I would. And I remember barely being able to get out of bed in the morning. And I was grieving for the old me, like, this isn't who I am, I bounced back, I could, and I was thinking, I was focused on all the things I couldn't do and who I no longer was. And I finally one day it just shifted, and I just said, well, what can I do? What am I capable and able to do now in this moment. And it literally was baby steps. And I was like, well, I can get up and brush my teeth. And I would do that. I'd get out of bed and I'd brush my teeth, and that was a huge win. And then I was getting dressed, and then I was getting up and showing up and maybe walking to the mailbox. Like it was literally one step at a time. So I stopped focusing on what I could no longer do, and I started asking myself in every single moment, well, what can I do now in this moment? What am I capable and able to do now in this moment? And then that led me to remarkable things.
Wow. Now, when I was doing research for your interview for this episode, and I was thinking, how in the world is she going to bike from Canada to Mexico, right? That's what I'm thinking in my mind. What in the world? But, knowing that, thinking about, okay, well, she's an Ironman athlete. She's an endurance cyclist, CrossFit enthusiast. So she's all about, this kind of stuff, right? And so you decided to ride your bike from Canada to Mexico. So what brought this decision on, and what was like, I have so many questions. It's like, how long did it take you? When did you stop and eat? What about the bathroom? Like, what was this experience like? I mean, although it sounds spectacular, and I mean, and just simply just amazing. I mean, girl, you rock. But I mean, yes, first, what brought this decision on? And then later, what was the experience like?
Thank you so much. Well, I remember sitting on the sofa again for I don't know how many days and struggling from radiation treatment. And I really started reflecting on my life. And I started looking at all my bucket list items. And I had always wanted to ride from coast to coast. And I was looking at some of the coast to coast routes, and none of them were appealing for me. And so but then I found the Pacific Coast Highway bicycle route and from Canada to Mexico. And I was like, that's the one. And I knew I was no longer going to do another Ironman race. I just couldn't physically run. My bones have changed. Tissues have changed. So but I could still bike. And so I signed up for this tour and hired a van that 9 other people shared, and the van transported my gear, but it was up to me to figure out how to get from point A to point B each day. And so basically started at the Canadian border and camped in my tent every night, maybe got a hotel 2 or 3 times, and it took 41 days with 4 rest days. And I remember one time, because you asked about peeing, and I remember one time I was in an area where there was no bathroom, nowhere to go, and I just had to drop trowel, and because I had to go. And luckily nobody came around the corner or anything, but sometimes you have to just get creative.
Oh my goodness. So what is one takeaway, or what is one of the takeaways you hope people have from reading your book, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor and a Bike?
Ooh, gosh, don't limit yourself. Live life fully and on your terms. And you don't have to go out and do an 1,800-mile bike ride, but oh my gosh, sign up for that cooking class or take that trip you've always wanted to take. But don't limit yourself.
I love that. Don't limit yourself. Because obviously you definitely haven't limited yourself. So I've already said it, but I commend you, Risa. You are absolutely an amazing woman, and you definitely have resilience. That is for sure.
Thank you so much. Oh.
So if you could describe your life in one word now, what word would you use?
Expansive has been my word lately.
Expansive. Wow. Okay, so why that word?
this tumor and disease has opened my life to so many things. Like I told you earlier, I went from being so rigid in particular, and I spent all this time training, and my life had to be this way. And then all of a sudden, I could no longer do a lot of that. I couldn't live within the rules or the confines or the constraints that I created for myself. And so now I had to expand outside of that. And this led me to like all kinds of dance classes, like hip hop and Bollywood and flamenco and going to the theater and signing up for improv classes and going indoor skydiving and axe throwing and all, you name it. Like I have been living such a full life because of it. And so I just feel like my life has expanded so much, and my connections with people are deeper and more intentional, and my heart is just growing. Oh my gosh. So that's what it feels like for me.
In your opinion, what are the best ways to build resilience?
I would say be flexible and open to what's possible. And maybe instead of seeing challenges as roadblocks, again, well, what can I do now in this moment? What am I capable and able to do now in this moment? And eventually you may find ways over, around, and even through those challenges. And they become merely a bump in the road.
Well, Risa, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. Please take the time to let everyone know how they can get a copy of your book, The Road Unpaved, Border to Border with a Brain Tumor and a Bike, or book you as a speaker because you are also a Gestalt trainer, right?
I am a Gestalt practitioner, yes. My book is available on paperback, ebook, and audiobook. You can find it on Amazon, or you could go to my website, Risa August, RISA, August, just like the month.com, to my book page, and you can find all of your purchasing options there. And you can also learn more about the other work I do as a speaker and a Gestalt practitioner as well.
Awesome. Any last words of encouragement for the listeners?
Yes. Let me ask you this. Where in your life might you be limiting yourself from accomplishing what it is you want to accomplish in this life? And what's one step you can take toward reaching that dream, goal, or target? Open yourself up to possibilities and ask yourself, what am I capable and able to do now in this moment? What can I do?
All right, listeners, Risa is challenging you to open up, and what areas in your life can you change? Risa, thank you so much. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Thank you for being a guest. Please take care.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here and able to share my story.
You have just listened to Life Jacked, the Resilience Podcast with your host, Dr. Rowe. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, and any other podcast streaming platform. Remember to live, laugh, love, learn, and then repeat. See you in the next episode.